This podcast is certified fresh. Freshmediaworks.com.
Desperately needed to learn about. And there's something about scrubbing 100 toilets a day for a bunch of men that if you don't learn about humility from that, there's something wrong.
Welcome to Lunch with Chris. We're your host, Chris Daly, brings you uplifting interviews with extraordinary individuals making a positive impact. Join as he introduces remarkable people who have left their mark on their respective fields.
Have you ever thought about doing your own podcast? It is the absolute best way to grow your brand, spread your message, and build your following. Fresh Media Works can help. We do all the heavy lifting, and you just focus on your message. To find out how easy we can make launching your new podcast, call 713-269-4620 or check us out at freshmediaworks.com. All right, everybody, join me in welcoming Richard Bronson to the show. Richard, how are you?
I'm great, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Of course. One thing I'd like to ask, I ask everybody, is where you grew up, where you got your start.
Well, I grew up in New York on Long Island, and after I attended college, I spent most of my 20s and 30s in Manhattan.
Got it. And for people who are going, I've heard that name, where have I heard it? They probably heard it from either the documentary or the film or something about Jordan Belfort, the Wolf of Wall Street. This is not about him, but you were part of that pack, correct?
Right. Or they've heard my name thinking of Richard Branson. I get that a lot too. But yes, I was a partner in the infamous Wolf of Wall Street firm. Mm-hmm. I went through all of that lunacy. And a couple of weeks ago, Paramount Plus dropped a 3-part series called The Real Wolf of Wall Street.
Right.
That was designed to tell the real story about what went on in those days, instead of glorifying the whole criminal enterprise that we were involved with. I'm not sure it fully did that, but that was the attempt, and I was very involved with that.
Nice, yeah, and that's where I discovered you, is from that, and I'm like, oh, I would like to hear from somebody who's not Jordan Belfort, because Jordan Belfort is out there doing infomercials and doing seminars and again, nothing against him. I've never met him, but he's telling his story how he wants it told.
Yeah, yes, he truly is telling it once or twice a day. That's for sure. Now he doesn't lack the motivation to tell his story. He's very good at self-promotion. That's for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. So, if you could, just what was right and what was wrong in the film versus the real Wolf of Wall Street?
I would say that there are striking parallels between Scorsese's film and the film Goodfellas.
Yeah.
Which is a Scorsese film, and which I loved, and sure. I think a lot of people did. Goodfellas glamorized and, almost exalted the mafia. Mm-hmm. And it made all of these guys into heroes in a way. And it made their lifestyle seem incredibly exciting and glamorous and desirable.
Right.
And I think to a certain extent that was true with The Wolf of Wall Street. Yeah. I can't tell you how often, including that Reddit Ask Me Anything, there were thousands of 25-year-old guys who lamented the fact that they weren't around then and they didn't have a chance to participate in the debauchery, the drugs, the sex, the rock and roll, the money, the gambling, the traveling, that was our, daily sort of routine, just like in the mafia, that they had, all of the lifestyle that they led.
Yeah.
And, coming out of it and years later and having perspective and having dealt with the shame and the prison that I went through and all of the, opportunity to reflect upon what happened to my life,
Hmm.
I really I try to smack them in the head and let them know, that, yeah, as a young guy, having gold Rolex watches and driving in Porsches and traveling and having pretty girls and going into a club and feeling like you own the place, there's a certain allure in all that,
Sure.
for sure. And if it weren't all based upon doing illegal things, I would do it again in a second. I'm sure I'd have a heart attack in 10 minutes, but nonetheless, it was a lot of fun, and the camaraderie, and all that stuff was great. But along the way, we hurt a lot of people.
Yeah.
And beyond hurting people, because we didn't rob from widows and orphans. That was a fallacy.
Hmm.
Widows and orphans don't have money. We wanted
Right.
to go after where the money was. And why, like casinos. Casinos don't want, as clients, people who don't have money because the
Right. They
odds are
want the
in their
bailout.
favor.
Yeah.
They want to go with deep pockets. And that was true of us too, because we were the house.
Hmm.
But what we did and what I did, I don't need to talk about anybody else other than
Sure.
myself and take responsibility for that. We were assholes. We were jerks. I was a jerk. I was disrespectful. And, I left Stratton to start my own firm
Uh-huh.
that, and we were all in cahoots with one another. And my firm had the same exact ethos and was doing the same
Right.
things and the same fun and the same immorality. And, my ego was raging out of control. And that's what I look back upon and how badly I just, on a daily basis, how I treated people.
Yeah.
And, be it driving down the highway in my Ferrari, and I thought nothing of cutting people off and yelling at people and treating people in a restaurant just poorly and disrespectfully, like the rules didn't apply to me.
Hmm.
And I'm deeply ashamed of that, you know? And, the movie didn't depict that at
Right.
all. And certainly not, it shouldn't have been glamorized in any way.
Mhm. And so when you said you left and made your own firm, was that, look, I can make more money that way, or was it, hey, we need a shell that doesn't look like Stratton Oakmont? What was the motivation there?
The motivation was Stratton was still in business and was still operating, on all cylinders. The advantage was that, well, imagine, an art auction whereby, the presumption is that the different people who are bidding on the art are competing.
Yeah.
And that by competing, if you're selling the art, that competition drives the price up. Well,
Got it.
imagine if instead of competing, you're in cahoots with one
Yeah.
another, like OPEC, and you're contriving to keep the prices low, if that's what you want to do,
Right.
until you want to make them go high, and then you want to make them go. In other words, you're manipulating the
And
market.
that's the pump part of the pump and dump.
Yeah, well, the dump also involves planning it out to your
Yeah.
advantage. and to the disadvantage of the unwitting public,
Right.
who's getting whipsawed and to their great detriment. So we were acting in cahoots and we would meet secretly. Typically, we were based in South Florida, my partner and I, and we would take private jets at night and we would meet Jordan, that was Leonardo DiCaprio, and Danny, that was Jonah Hill. We'd meet for dinner and we would, inevitably show up for dinner. And if we were 5 minutes late, Jordan particularly would have taken many Quaaludes
Hmm.
and he would be half passed out at the dinner table. And if we were really late, he'd be truly just, completely gone. But mostly he was, however gone he was, he still was able to take care of business.
Hmm.
And we would plan an upcoming initial public offering, which is where we made the lion's share of the money that we'd make. And we'd
Right.
plan how we would trade it and what prices we would do what and who would make the money and how this would all work. Because there were all kinds of undisclosed owners of stock that we would take care of and all kinds of shenanigans, which were
Mhm.
all illegal.
Right.
So, we would make money illegally by the manipulation of the markets and by how we would sell. We would do, the things we would say about the stocks, which were complete nonsense, how great they were. We would compare them, we'd compare the equivalent of a corner newsstand, we'd compare it to Apple computers, something like it was this incredible enterprise.
Right.
Well, had you owned Apple, you would have been happy, right? Yeah, well, here's your chance to own the next Apple. And it
Right.
would be, this silly little nothing company that barely existed. And we used to beat people up to buy and we would just keep going. It was like buy or die was the ethos.
Hmm.
And these were wealthy investors, wealthy business people typically who had lots of money. And if they lost on this one, they had money for the next one.
And just enough greed to take a chance.
Not just enough. They had plenty of greed. And that was part of it. They always, and why they weren't orphans and widows,
Yeah.
they were of the opinion that they were smarter than us.
Yeah.
And that, they were used to in their business and in their dealings with their other stockbrokers, because the people we were after, this wasn't their first account that they were opening on the phone. They had
Right.
done this many times, and they were used to dealing with probably timid, untrained brokers who would just take their orders and do whatever they were told. Whereas we were well trained in how to fight back and get them to do what we were telling them to do. And we used all kinds of psychological ploys to try to make them feel like they were much, much less important to us than we were to them.
Right.
And, we would say to them, you should buy 1 million shares. And they would go, how much is that? And we go, like $25 million. By even mentioning that immediately made them feel like they were small
Yeah.
because we would say, well, that's what most of our clients are buying. And that immediately made them feel like that they were very small fry. So
Right.
we took away, their whole basis of feeling that they were big shots. Let's get that out of the way. You're not a
Right.
big shot to me. You're a small fry. And the mere fact that I'm calling you up, somehow you slipped between the cracks because I don't normally talk to someone as minor a stock player as you are. But
Right.
while I have the phone, I might as well tell you how we really make money on Wall Street. Either you want to hear about it or you don't. If you don't, please don't waste my time. And we would just smack them down to side, like, like they do in the Marines. First, I'm
Sure.
going to beat you down and then I'm going to rebuild you. And I'll
Yep.
really show you how money is made. And that's what everybody always wanted because they always felt like somebody knows how to make money. If I could
Right.
only find that key. And we represented ourselves as the ones who could show them how to make money. Of
Right.
course, just the opposite was true.
Yeah. Did you, while this was happening, did you have reservations? How did you deal with that conflict internally? Or was there any?
Was there reservations?
Yeah.
First of all, anybody there or indeed on Wall Street, because let me just say, and I don't say this to exonerate myself or
Mhm.
make it that in any way I'm less of a bad guy because I was a bad guy. And not a day goes by, and this is 30 years later.
Mhm.
Um, I knew exactly that what I was doing was wrong from day one. Some people, if you watch the movie or if you talk to them now or if they're interviewed, they'll talk about that they had no idea what they were doing was wrong and that Jordan sucked them in and they hate him for it. And he was this Svengali and, blah, blah, blah. That's what they got wrong. That's completely
Right.
not true. Everybody knew. We talked about it. We laughed about it. We laughed about the poor suckers that we took to the cleaners. Everybody knew. You don't make that much money doing anything that quickly unless there's something wrong. If it's too good to be true, it's not true. So, number one, everybody knew it. I knew it. Certainly, I knew it from day one. I had experience, and you'd have to be a real idiot not to know it.
Right.
Which is not to say some of the people weren't real idiots, but everybody knew it. Um, I felt on the one hand that I'm not a bad guy, and yet I'm a bad guy. I'm a good guy doing bad things. So that's the definition of cognitive dissonance.
Yep.
You got two opposite things happening at the same time. So how do you deal with it? Either you walk away and you say, I can't do both. I can't think I'm a good guy and lead a life of being a good guy while doing bad things. So what most people do to try to mitigate that disconnect is they take drugs or they
Right.
drink or whatever to try to mask or medicate away that dissonance. And
Mhm.
that's certainly what I did, and most of us did. Quaaludes were our drug of choice. It was a sedative that originally existed to put people asleep. And then people discovered that if you took enough and if you kind of kept yourself awake from those moments when you were supposed to fall asleep from it, you got high from it.
Huh.
And it made you feel elated. It made you feel that you were, a super person who could do anything, that you had zero inhibitions. That was a big part of it.
Right.
That you loved everybody. You had total confidence. You could do or say anything. If you're a young guy, you could walk up to the prettiest girl in a club, and in 2 minutes, you believed that she'd be on your arm. Just like that, no matter who you were, you had that power.
So that said, if you had not gotten caught or the lifestyle had not caught up with you and killed you or something, would you still be doing it?
Well, and the fact that it weren't terribly illegal. I
Right.
mean, yeah, I mean, it was fun.
Yeah.
It was great fun, and the camaraderie was great, and I never laughed so hard. And, I can go on about ending up with women that are way above your weight class and, the creature comforts. And I built a company with 400 employees, doing close to $100 million in revenue. Everybody wanted to be my friend.
Yeah.
And wherever I went, you know, the waiters treated us well. There was always the best table, and I drove great cars, and I had a mansion on the beach, and I collected art. And I mean, I can go on, and I had a
Sure. Sure.
nightclub in South Beach. I can go on and on. I mean, you don't have to dig very deep to see the allure of
Yeah.
all those things. There wasn't any great psychological discovery, underneath it. Um, I was miserable simultaneously. I had a guy who worked for me, and I'll never forget what he said to me. He said, "You are the most miserable millionaire I've ever met," because as fun and gleeful all of this was, it was also eating me up inside,
Mhm.
and it was eating me up inside because I knew how badly the things I was doing was. And that, to me, that only suggests how guilty and how wrong what I was doing. I never ever got away from the knowledge that I was doing things that were bad and immoral. So
Right.
that puts me at the very, very top of, of the bad guy list, as far as I'm concerned.
Sure. So that said, can you say now that you're glad it all crashed and burned?
Yes,
Okay. So
absolutely. I'm glad that I couldn't wait for the knock on my door for the feds to show up with a gun and a badge and to say, "Richard, now it's your time. You know, your
yeah.
days are over." And I just couldn't wait. I
Right.
couldn't wait because I couldn't, uh, I was just so miserable having it all.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know,
It
I,
sounds crazy, but I get it. Uh,
yeah,
it, it,
I
it
needed to be punished.
well, let's talk about that punishment and what that meant to you and what you learned from that.
Well, in the broadest sense, I mean, I study Buddhism now, and I believe in karma, and I believe that our forget about my attachment to my ego is ultimately where all the problems come from. And I was certainly very attached to my ego. And um, as I said before, I mean, that drove my being just such a jerk and my need for things, and money and whatever. And ultimately, it never brought me true happiness. It was
Mhm.
always momentary and fleeting and brought with it great unhappiness and misery, you know, and it ultimately put me in prison, which
Yeah.
is not a place where you're going to find great happiness
But you
ultimately.
found something there. What did you
I
get
learned
from that?
about, I learned, I can't say that I walked out of there a perfect person by any means,
Sure.
but I certainly learned a lesson about humility. And that was what I desperately needed to learn about. And there's something about scrubbing 100 toilets a day for a bunch of men that if you don't learn about humility from that, there's something
Yeah.
wrong. if you're in prison, it's hard to really convince yourself that you're that much of a big shot, particularly when you know when you get out of prison, you don't have a penny to your name. You don't have a, I came out of prison destitute and homeless. Okay. So that
Right.
is not a position to feel all that proud of yourself or that you're that
Mhm.
much of a big shot. And feeling like you're a big shot is not really what you want to be or what I want to be.
Right.
So I'm a lot humbler than I was, but I believe in karma and I've dedicated my life since I came out of prison to do things that will sort of hopefully balance that karmic scale
Right.
so
Yeah.
that in my next lifetime I don't come back as a cockroach.
Let's talk about that because you walk out destitute and homeless, but you made something of yourself. You created those things you talk about that hopefully are balancing that scale. Explain that.
Well, when I got out of prison, I couldn't find a job.
Sure.
I had a good education. I had a lot of success. I'm a white male in white corporate America, but I couldn't get a job. And I didn't know who I was. Was I just a successful criminal? And now I'm not going to be a criminal again. I mean, that much I knew. I wasn't going to break the law again. And if for no other reason, what I put my family through,
Mm.
I just could not do that again, no matter what. So what do I do? Am I a big, am I a successful businessman? Is that should what I should be aiming to repeat? Or was my success because I was doing illegal things? And should I start my life from the very beginning without the ego? Should I go work at McDonald's? Is that the right thing? I had no idea, but I couldn't
Mhm.
find a job until I said, all right, maybe what I should do is find a job that my background, my criminal record is not only not an impediment to getting me hired, but might actually be a benefit. So I found a nonprofit organization that works with people coming out of prison to help them.
Mhm.
And I said, that sort of hit me as there's a certain elegant rightness about that. And maybe, you know, that makes sense for the next stage of my life.
Mhm.
And it sort of hit me as an epiphany that this is sort of the right thing that I should be doing. And indeed, it set my life in a brand new direction. And that's what I've been doing since I got out of prison for the last 20 years or so. I worked at a couple of different reentry nonprofits.
Mhm.
Then I had this idea about how technology could help people with records get jobs. And I had no technical background whatsoever. I didn't know anything about technology, to be truthful, but I still had ideas. And I, talked to a few different people. And out of the clear blue sky, I get an email from an organization that's called Y Combinator.
Yeah.
Y Combinator, for those who don't know, is the preeminent accelerator program for the very best tech companies in the world. Companies like Reddit, coincidentally, and Airbnb and Dropbox and DoorDash, and I could go on and on,
Sure.
but multi-bazillion dollar companies go through this program. And I got a cold email, and it turned out it was from Sam Altman, of all people. Sam Altman at the time was the president of Y Combinator. And
Mhm.
I got on a Zoom call, and it was with Sam Altman. And it was one of the most bizarre Zoom calls I've ever had. But Sam said, I've heard about you and I've heard about your ideas about jobs for people with records. And we'd like to fund you. And we'd like you to go through our program. And here I am. At the time, I was 55 or 56 years old, which would make me probably the oldest person ever to go through this program.
Right.
I have a criminal record. I have zero, literally zero technical expertise. And all the other people in the program are 25 years old and they have multiple PhDs from MIT and Stanford.
Mhm.
And here I am, a complete outlier. And I go through the program and I build this company called 70 Million Jobs. And lo and behold, it turns out to be very successful. We help thousands of people get jobs and we make money doing it, which was a shock to everybody. Unfortunately, COVID comes along and companies stop hiring people for the jobs that we were placing our people in, and our revenue goes to zero. Jump ahead to now, which is like 6 years later or so. And now we have AI all over the place. And I'm now working on a company called Commissary Club.
Mhm.
Commissary.club is the URL. And we use AI now to handle all of the stages that people who have records, but also people who are immigrants or seniors or veterans or people who need to apply for benefits or find housing or jobs. It handles all of the tasks that they need to perform to apply for jobs or
Mhm.
housing or benefits, which normally is way over their head. They just
Sure.
can't do it. It's just too complicated. They have a mobile phone to try to create a resume, for example. It's impossible. And the AI does it for them. So that's what I'm working on right now. And it's a huge market globally. It's like 3 billion people. So we've gotten a great response, and lots of VCs are interested in investing in it. So that's what I'm working on now.
That's very cool. Very cool. Looking back, what's your biggest life lesson? If you could grab your 15-year-old self, what would you tell him?
Um, well, I mean, there are things that I think I've done right in my life, things I've done wrong. The right is always try to swing for the seats.
Yeah, I love it.
Take, I mean, I've always been a big risk taker. That's who I am. So when someone, a young person asks me about being an entrepreneur, the chances of a startup succeeding are very slim. Take a chance, and swing for the seats, So I believe in that. But at the same time, in your life, have the patience to avoid making stupid mistakes, taking shortcuts, and certainly breaking the law to get to where you want to go. Because A, your victories are going to be hollow and you won't really enjoy whatever you do that looks successful. Um, Let the game play out, and trust the universe to that it'll the right thing will happen the way it's supposed to. It won't happen the way you expect it to. There's a Yiddish expression, man plans and God laughs.
Yeah,
I long gave up on trying to plan out or expecting I'll know how things will play out. Nothing in my life ever came out the way I expected it, but I think that's totally cool. I love that about my life.
yeah,
Give yourself the space to let serendipity play out. Believe that anything can happen, that you can turn the corner and then, anything can happen. but give it the time to play out. That's what I believe.
I love it. Richard Bronson, I want to thank you so much for sitting down with me and for sharing this fascinating story, but most of all, your positive messages that you have, because that's the important part.
Thanks, Chris. I really appreciate it.
Ready to grow your podcast beyond 1,000 downloads per episode? Join the Podcast Masters Guild and unlock proven strategies, expert coaching, and a community of fellow podcasters to elevate your show. Visit freshmediaworks.com/PMG and start growing today.